One of my favorite games of all time is Kenshi. There are four main things that I really love about this game. Those would be the world, how it looks, the biomes, all of that, relationships with you and other people in the world, the story, the factions, how your character evolves, and the challenge. You die a lot. Now, I'll go on the record and say that this game is not for everybody. In fact, I think a lot of the people that try it will probably not like it. But if you stick through it past that beginning little hump, and you are powerful, you can fight for yourself, then the game gets super fun. Most of the early game consists of you being beaten to near death, until you can finally become strong enough to maybe defend yourself for 5 minutes. This game has so many factions and so many different interactions with each other. It's insane. And choosing which one to go with is huge. Or you could always just take the route of none. You could be your own settlement. You could be your own faction. You could take down everyone in the world. You could be peaceful with everyone. There's so many options. For example, the one of the three major factions, the Shek, are warriors that believe in death through battle. They're usually so strong that if you're coming into contact with battles that have already finished, you'll usually find limbs scattered throughout the battlefield. It's because of their strength that they're one of the hardest factions to ally with. Once again, they only value strength. If you can't fight, you're not joining them. Especially due to the fact that everyone in the Shek Kingdom is Shek, so they're not very inclusive with outsiders. During the time you're playing, the Shek Kingdom is being controlled by Esta, the stone golem. She has been taking a controversial stance with the Shek Kingdom that a lot of the Shek are not happy with. You see, how it would operate before is that they would just go to war seeking death, because that's how you had to die. You can't die any other way. But Esta took a different approach. She thought to be more thoughtful with her approach. That's the reason why you can enter those cities, actually. But because of that thoughtful approach, a lot of the Shek are not happy with her rulership. But she's the strongest, and that's how it goes. The next faction is the Holy Nation. They are racist, and they hate everybody who isn't a man. A human man. They don't like the Shek, they don't like the robots, they don't like the bugs. They don't like anybody. The one thing they do like is Okran, their god. Okranism in this world is basically there are robots, and a long time ago they revolted, and in Okranism there was a guy, and he killed all the robots. He was the driving force for humanity. He's the reason they survived. So now Okranism is just the hatred of basically the robots, and then over time it evolved to everyone else. The leader of the Holy Nation is the Holy Phoenix. There have been multiple Holy Phoenixes throughout time, and basically each Holy Phoenix is a descendant of Okran himself, so they're very respected and very powerful. The Holy Nation are also very heavy advocates for slavery, taking anyone they deem impure, that being the bugs, the women, all that, and sending them to slave camps so they can be quote-unquote rebirthed. However, it's just slave labor. You just mine. The third and final faction is United Cities. These guys are the number one slavers. There are like 3 different factions that are all dedicated to enslaving you. If you're seen out alone, they'll enslave you. If you're too poor, they'll enslave you. If you're hungry, starving, they'll enslave you. Basically, they find any reason to enslave you. The United Cities is run by Emperor Tengu. He's just a rich guy, and not very nice. So far, I've talked about all the 3 big factions. However, there's tons and tons and tons of smaller ones, like the Flotsam Ninjas, who are a group of women dedicated to just destroying the Holy Nation, and the Anti-Slavers, who are obviously against slavery, and their main enemy is United Cities. All of these interactions between each other and these different groups that you can join and influence just make every playthrough of the game feel unique to you. And you're forming, you are a cog in this world. You are a piece of the puzzle. You're not formed around it. You're just a guy. But with training and time, you become someone who changes the world. I think a lot of that forms as you go. For example, if you picked up someone like Beep, for example, the little cute bug guy, maybe you would have second thoughts about joining a faction like the Holy Nation, who specifically hates the little bug guys and hates Beep. Not nice. There's also a deep system with you recruit like a mercenary group under the mercenary faction, and you have them with you when you're fighting against a faction like the United Cities. They'll be enemies with the United Cities. If you fight them enough, they'll start to become enemies with each other and to attack each other on sight. As well as this, some of the buildings are tied to, some of the cities are tied to specific characters or situations. For example, if you kill, like, rich people in one of the United Cities towns, it'll be, like, taken over by peasants. Along your journey, you make lots of allies as well as enemies. For example, if you ally with the Flotsam Ninjas, that means you're severing ties with the Holy Nation entirely. If you make connections with one member, there's no way of getting out. There are pacifists that you can find in, like, bars. However, those are for less permanent, like if you attacked a townsperson. Then you can go to them and pay it off. But for the more extreme cases, such as, joining the Flotsam Ninjas, the faction that's designed around taking them down, there no matter of money could reform that relationship. However, you also get tons of there's so many ways to ally with people. You can raise relationships by doing small things, like healing each other. Healing someone of the other faction can get their thing up, as well as a lot of factions accept monetary donations, except for the Shek. The Shek you only gain their worth from fighting. But you could ally eventually with the United Kingdom as well as Holy Nation just by giving them tons and tons and tons of money. One thing Kenshi does absolutely amazing is making this world feel lived in before you're in control. There are so many ruins and all of these things. Like, even in this footage, you can see broken houses. It's clear that this town has had history. And in this case, that history is a war going on between the Shek and the Holy Nation. But there are so many of these environmental storytelling pieces that they're so good. There's tons of cool interactions that you never would have seen if you didn't meet the specific requirements. For example, the robots are old. They just keep living. They don't die unless they're actively killed. So there are tons of unique dialogue between other skeletons and each other. Skeletons and the robots. And the world feels like things have happened before you've gotten here. In addition to that, you yourself make the story as you go. You could have this tiny little scrawny guy, and he slowly rises his way through the ranks and becomes like a king of sorts. And you make these stories in your playthroughs. You choose how it's gonna play out, and then you do that. And to add on to that, the existing story is already just really cool. For a gist of it, it starts off, there's just humans. It's just plain old boring humans. And they create the robots called skeletons. And eventually they go to war, and so they have the idea to get these big robots called, like, I don't forget, but they're big. And after they win the war with them, they realize how destructive they are. So they bring them to a pit and fill it with liquid metal. And so the normal robots, they kind of get a little worried after that. They think, are they going to do that to us next? So what they do is they stage a revolt. And they win. They successfully do it. They don't kill all the humans. They just revolt. They just do that. Which brings forth the new empire, which is where it's ruled by Catlon, which is a robot, and that's what the currency is named after, cats. From there, the empire continues to, just get better overall. But slowly, Catlon kind of goes crazy, and he starts becoming oppressive and, evil. He would wipe the memory of other robots serving him so they wouldn't leave. And then the whole society was crumbling around him. So now he resides in the Ashlands alone, and it's just crazy. He has no mind at this point, because the robots have to regularly reset their mind, or else they'll go insane. They live forever after all. From here, humans split off into two categories. The normal humans, and the other group started to grow horns, which is what the Shek are today. At some point, the Hive, the bug people, sailed in, or they were always here. It's not entirely explained, but they are not people that shapeshift. They're an entirely different species, race. I think this game wouldn't be nearly as fun as it is if it wasn't for the challenge, because it fits in with the idea that you're not special. When you start the game, you don't have any skills. There are all these stats, and you have one in every single one of them. But you can choose which start you want, and that will affect the game difficulty. This affects how many people you start with, how much money you start with, what stats you start with. For example, the Cannibal Hunter start puts you in the middle of a cannibal camp, and you gotta get out of there or you'll die. However, you do get a little boost of stats when you start out. So there's also starts like the slaves, which, they start off hungry in Rebirth, which is one of the worst situations you can possibly be in, as once you're hungry and starving, it's very hard to escape, because it kind of debuffs all your stats across the board. You start off so weak in all of the starts that for most of the time, you're just going to be mining for the majority of the early game, until you can recruit someone that actually does have competence. Someone like Kang in Squin, for example, who has 20s in his attack stats. He can help keep you in the fight for a little longer while you're still training, so you don't die immediately. But by the time you reach the mid to late game, you've built up this vast group of guys that all feel unique and special in their own way, even if they're not. In the game, there are unique recruits that have specific personalities, but even the generic ones you can just find in random bars. Over time, they grow on you. They start to feel like their own character. is just a person now. There's so much stuff that I just did not talk about because I didn't have the time, or I just honestly I don't know how to really explain it well. But I really love this game. It's amazing, and I would highly recommend that you play it or at least check it out and recommend it to a friend. This game is great.